What's going on, guys? This is Matt with the Faceoff Sports Network. Going to wait on Tyler here before we jump into some buy-sell players. But if you're here in the chat, be sure to let me know, comment, any questions you have. Going to go through the draft a little bit, talk about some of my favorite sleepers in Dynasty right now. I've got a ton of drafts that are rolling through. I've been on the clock. I've made a bunch of selections. It's my favorite time of year when we get to draft season. Looking at some of these landing spots and where we saw some of these players land, there's going to be a lot of things that we have to talk about, how it impacts the veterans and what that means going forward. If these rookies are going to get on the field quickly, I mean, we've got the whole Skattebo and Tyrone Tracy. We'll talk about that a little bit today. The Jacksonville Jaguars running back room is kind of a mess. It's going to be, who are you going to bet on? What players are you going to pick? There's a lot to go through. I'm really excited. Once Tyler gets on here, we're going to walk through some buy sells on these players, tell you where we're leaning. I do want to give a shout out to Pete's guy. RJ Harvey got some pretty significant capital in round 2. I'm kind of shocked everyone heading to Denver. I've seen him go as high as the 108, and he's gone as recent in my drafts as the 204. So he's kind of volatile right now. Definitely a player to look into. I think he's got a lot to offer. I mean, coming out of UCF, he's a smaller guy. He's kind of that Bucky Irving role where he's quick, agile, can catch the ball out of the backfield. But he's a heck of a player. So I'm excited to draft him in my dynasty leagues. Like I said, somewhere in that early second round. He's also floating kind of near Trey Harris, which is a guy that we talked a lot about on our channels. When we did our wide receiver rankings, he was up there, I think 5 or 6 overall. He finds his way in Los Angeles with the Chargers, tied to Justin Herbert, opposite of Ladd McConkey. There is a lot to like about Trey Harris. He's someone that I've seen, again, kind of go in that 112 to the 204 range. And if I can get him at the 204, that's where I'm going to be drafting him every single time. I really like Trey Harris's landing spot and how he could impact our rosters going forward. But if you guys are in here, be sure to comment. We'll go through any questions you have. We'll talk our buy sells. If you're on the clock, let me know. I'll help you make your pick. I'll give you my thoughts on who's available. But we've already got one comment here, so let's jump to that one. It's good evening. I have an interesting offer. I gave up Hampton for James Cook in a late 26 first in a 14-team PPR league. Do I accept? Interesting offer here. I mean, if you're looking at Hampton, I'm not the biggest Amari Hampton fan. You know, I released my running back rankings right after the draft finished pretty quickly, and I had him at 2nd overall. I think he's not far from there. But the more I've been on the clock and the more I've been faced with that situation, I find myself leaning towards Travion Henderson. I really like Henderson's landing spot. I think he was the better athlete. I think he's got the path to be a superstar in the NFL, where I think Amari Hampton can be a solid 3-down back, but I don't necessarily think he's going to elevate a team to being a running back superstar. So me personally, I'm a little bit down on Hampton, but I don't want that to make it sound like I don't like him at all, because I've already drafted him at least once. I think he's still pretty high up in dynasty rankings. But for me personally, I think I'd have him closer towards that 10 range, where a guy like James Cook, he's probably, top 15, but you're going to get probably a pretty solid year from him. It's a contract year. He wants to get paid. And on top of that, 26 first is pretty valuable. So if your team's rebuilding or you think you're going to need that asset, I would be interested in making that trade. If you're pretty much a contender and you're wanting the win now asset, I think Hampton's a pretty good asset to have, because he's also going to grow in value as he moves forward. Let's not forget Najee Harris just signed a 1-year deal, so we shouldn't overreact too much about that landing spot. We know Jim Harbaugh likes to run the ball, so I think he's going to be just fine as we move forward. What's going on, Jamie? Thanks for jumping in. He's also got a question for us. I made 2 elite trades today in the same league, 10-team Superflex tight end premium. Let us know what you did. I'm interested to know what those trades are. It's cut off. I'm dying to know. You can't leave me hanging like that. What's going on, Albert? Appreciate you being in here. We'll get started here in just a few minutes when Tyler joins. He's a little bit late, but I'll keep going through some of this draft class. I mean, another name that we need to talk about is Caleb Johnson. I mean, he finds his way in Pittsburgh. What does that mean for Jaylen Warren? We're going to talk about that today. Jamie says, gave up Bo Nix in the 110. Took my guy Loveland. Okay. I like Loveland. I mean, that's interesting. So was it Bo Nix for the 110 where you took? I assume that's what it is. Man, that's tough. I'm sure somewhere Pete's crying a little bit that you moved on from Bo Nix. Coach would be too. He's obsessed with him. And then you got the 101 Genty for the 401 and Pollard. There's no way. You got Genty for basically free if that's the case. That is crazy, man. Paul says, hey, in a 1 QB draft, would you rather have the 209 and the 210 or the 302, 307, 309 and a 26 fourth? Good question. I mean, this has come down to the situation of, are you needing more players? Or are you needing more dart throws? Now, in a 1 QB league, that pushes a lot of these skill positions up. So they're going to go quicker in drafts. Whereas we're going to see guys like Cam Ward, Dart, Shuck, Sanders, so on and so forth. They're going to fall down the board. So you have to contemplate that once you get to the. If you're on the clock, that's another thing I want to say. I don't know if your draft has already started, but if you're on the clock and the 209's up, what are the players available? What are you looking at? Is it a tier break? Because you got to be careful of where some of these players might get cut off. I mean, I'm in a 1 QB draft right now, and I'll even pull it up and take a look and see where we're at. But I think here I would lean having the 209 and the 210 just because that 307 and 309 is going to start to get a little bit sketchy of who you're drafting. There are some guys that I like that are falling into the third round. It just kind of depends on whether they're going to have an immediate fantasy impact or any impact at all. So I would probably take the 2 seconds in that situation. Hofson here in the background, he says, in Bo Nix we trust. That's right. Bo Nix we trust. That's what Pete and Coach would say at least. Jamie says, then I gave up Jalen McMillan, Jalen Wright, and Garendo for the 310 for Trey Harris. Dude, I love Trey Harris, man. I love Trey Harris. So I'm not going to fight you too much. I mean, it's interesting with Jalen McMillan. What's going to happen? We'll dive into that a little bit tonight in our buy sale, so I'm not going to spoil that. But, man, Trey Harris, I could talk for days about him. Aaron says, who would you take, Higgins, Harris, Beck, or Royals? If I'm on the clock, so I know Higgins is a guy that Pete really likes. I liked Higgins' tape. I mean, it was pretty solid. He's fluid, athletic for his size. You don't see that very often. Trey Harris, in my opinion, is a guy that has an elite ceiling. He's tied to a good quarterback. He's opposite of Ladd McConkey. That's who I'm chasing in this situation. I think Trey Harris has the ability to stretch the field. He's got fantastic hands, and he makes plays. So it's an easy pick for me. I'm taking Harris all day. Jack Betch, great player, solid hands, definitely probably the hardest worker out of this group. Really like him, but I think he's just a little bit a tier below. He's kind of capped in how much he can do on the field, whereas Trey Harris, in my opinion, I think can really be a guy that explodes onto the scene, and we look back and go, whoa, this guy's pretty dang good. I mean, let's not forget T. Higgins was a second-round pick when he was drafted. Trey Harris, a second-round pick. Maybe not necessarily the ceiling of T. Higgins, not the same profile, but he's a good player, man. So I really like him. When I watched his tape, he reminded me a lot of Amari Cooper, but he's got a little bit more juice to him. So interesting. And then Jalen Royals, interesting situation. Will he fill that Rashee Rice role? I don't know. I'm not really at the point where I want to make the bet on Royals. I know a lot of people are really, really high on him, but I would take all three of those guys over Jalen Royals, in my opinion. Jamie says that Genty trade will be featured on my Dynasty podcast tomorrow night on the Fantasy Six Pack. Hey, if you guys are in here, go check out the Fantasy Six Pack. That's awesome, man. I'm going to have to tune in and check out what that trade is because I am very interested to know. Paul says, not on the clock. I currently have 3 third-round picks. I'm arguably the most competitive team. I like it, man. I mean, I love having 3 picks in the third round. I was telling the guys that I'm in a draft tomorrow. Well, it's going on right now, but I think I'll be on the clock tomorrow where I have 6 straight third-round picks. And I'm thinking about live streaming it or at least recording it so that way I can walk you guys through my process of each player and why I pick them. So definitely interesting. I love those third-round dart throws. Coach says it all the time, by the third. These guys can hit and make things really, really beneficial for your roster, kind of change the way you're approaching your team. Aaron says he's at the 207. So, yeah, I think at the 207, if that's who's available for you is these players right here, it's an easy Trey Harris for me. I could not pass him at all. Yes, Higgins got the higher draft capital where he was taken at the beginning of the second round. Jack Betch was the second round, I believe, too. But I think Harris is just a guy that has a different ceiling. I mean, Higgins is always going to be the number 2 behind Nico. They also drafted his teammate, Jalen Noel, who's kind of a different guy. He's going to be a slot speedster, and he's a really good player too. So don't get it twisted. Yes, he went later in the draft, but Noel is a fantastic player. His combine scores are incredible. He was just as productive at Iowa State, so I really like his situation too. And he slides into a role where they kind of need that slot. I mean, yes, they went and added Christian Kirk. If Coach was here, he'd be yelling at me because I love Kirk too much, but I do think there's a world where that can really benefit your roster and taking Harris right now over these other guys. Let's see. Questions are flying in. Thanks, guys, for throwing your questions. We will certainly continue to hit those. But let's see. It says, I have Hampton already, though, so it's okay if I have Hampton. Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, that wouldn't impact my thought process at all. I mean, you certainly sometimes want to diversify, but at the same time, this Chargers offense is pretty good. Herbert's been very consistent throwing the ball, not necessarily having a ton of turnovers, especially the last 2 years. I think he has a total of like 9 interceptions. So they take care of the ball, they score the ball. Yes, Hampton's going to get a ton on the ground game, but I do think that Harris just has an elite upside, man. Like I do see a world where he could be really, really good. And I mean, he's competing with just Mike Williams. This team brought in Mike Williams to be that field stretcher. Harris can do that. If you go back and watch his tape, a lot of it is just limited to the scheme of Ole Miss. So it's a lot of screens. Didn't necessarily run a lot of the route tree that he could do. But in LA with the Chargers, he's going to have every opportunity to do it, and he's more than capable. So be sure to hit that like button. Keep the comments rolling. I will keep answering all the questions that I can do. Let's see here. I'm looking to trade Marvin Harrison Jr. Any ideas on what his value is? Yeah, for sure. I mean, we just did a video not too long ago about buy, sell on Marvin Harrison, so you can be sure to go check that out if you want our full report on that. But just being me, I would tell you that I am buying Marvin Harrison. His value right now, I think, is probably akin to 2 firsts. If your draft has not started, I say 2 firsts as in being future first to 26. If your draft has not started and you still have your first round pick, I think there's a world where you could probably get it done for the 106 to 107. If I'm on the clock and I'm faced with needing a wide receiver, and let's say the best available is Matthew Golden, who I love, Emeka Egbuka, or Luther Burden, those guys, I would much rather have Marvin Harrison. So I would look to maybe send the 106 to 108 for Marv. And if you need to sprinkle something on top, just go find something that you can get that little cushion just to entice that manager to take that deal. But be sure to just send us a DM. We'll help you make the trade if you'd like, or comment in here and we'll certainly come back to it if you start getting in negotiation mode. Rico says, traded Swift for Corum in a mid-third pre-draft. Did I rob myself? Well, we're going to talk about Swift here in just a few minutes, so we'll more on that in a second. Trading for Corum in a mid-third. I mean, did you rob yourself? No, I don't think so. I like the Corum hold. I mean, I don't think necessarily he's going to amount to anything for your roster, but there's an opportunity that he could get should something happen to Kyren Williams. Yes, they made an investment into Quez Hunter from Auburn in the draft, but I think that was in the 4th or 5th round. So Corum's someone interesting to have as a handcuff, certainly someone that should be rostered, not a guy I have many shares of. Actually, I don't even know if I have one at all. But that mid-third, the mid-third is something that I am interested in. And if you ask me, would I trade, DeAndre Swift for a mid-third? I think the answer is probably yeah. I mean, it's pretty close. I think getting Corum and the third makes the value there. So I'm fine with that trade. You didn't rob yourself. I mean, we'll talk more about Swift. I don't want to spoil it all because we're about to go into that once Tyler gets in here. But for now, just know that you did not rob yourself. You're going to be fine. Where are you taking Pat Bryant? I see him going undrafted in my Shark Leagues. He's going earlier. Same situation for me. So I've seen him go undrafted at least once. I've seen him go in the 2nd round. That's probably a little bit too early for me. Yes, he's in an interesting landing spot where he has the ability to have some early starts. What's going on, Tyler? Thanks for jumping in.
What's up? Tyler. I heard my name. I thought I'd jump in.
He says, wow, no, Tyler. He's here, Pete. He just was running a little late. We're good. But yeah, I think Pat Bryant is someone that's probably going to continue to be faded in this class just because when we get to this 3rd round, there's so many running backs that people are going to take shots on. And then you've got guys like Tesla, Royals, Horton, like so on and so forth that have capital that people are interested in. So I don't know. I wasn't the biggest Pat Bryant believer. There's certainly players I like, but you can't deny that offense is something that you want to be tied to. I think that is all of our questions, Tyler. So I think I got us caught up. If you are in here, be sure to hit that like button. Continue to do your questions. We will pick them up. We're going to go through segments, go through some different players, and we will come back to your questions. If you want to jump the line or if you want us to get to your question quick, you can send us a super chat. We will be appreciative of that, but we will continue to scroll through. Tyler, are you ready, my friend?
Let's do it, man.
All right. Well, let's talk about our first buy-sell, guys. And that is going to be who we were just talking a little bit about, and that's DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, is he a buy or is he a sell? For me, he's a sell. And here's why. I think his days are limited in Chicago. The offense is something that's added a ton of pieces as we've moved through the offseason. They completely revamped that offensive line, which is good for the running back room. But on the flip side, they did make a draft pick of a running back, and that was Kyle Monangai from Rutgers in the 7th round, late pick. I understand, not necessarily the biggest move, but I do think that is a body that they added. Let's not forget this team was making active negotiations to try and go sign Kareem Hunt. So I think the days for DeAndre Swift are numbered. Yes, he's going to have a workload at the beginning of the year, but I do think there's a world where someone, including Roshan or Monangai, eats into that workload. I think the pass catchers, they're going to have a ton of opportunities. They drafted Luther Burden in the 2nd round. He's another guy that gets those manufactured touches that's going to find a way to probably end up in the backfield sometimes and do some gadgety plays. So I just think that DeAndre Swift might be a little bit capped. So if I could move off of him, now would be the time. The question is, what's the value? For me, I'd probably be looking for somewhere around that mid to late 2nd if I'm looking at a pick, or maybe make a player with a little bit more upside that's got, less age or better opportunity, but he's a sell for me. I mean, you can make the case where he's a buy in the short term if you're a contending team. I'm not going to fault you too much if you hold on to him, but long term, you need to be thinking about how can you get off DeAndre Swift and where can you capitalize.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100% there. I think he's a sell as well. We've seen that the Bears have tried to supplement their running back room in multiple ways. They've done it through the draft now that being like a 6th, 7th round pick, like you said, in Monangai. There's been people that have linked Nick Chubb to them as well. So, I mean, if Nick Chubb goes there, that's going to give Ben Johnson his little 1-2 punch that like he had with the Lions. And I'll be honest, the reason we liked that is because both backs, both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, are able to produce in that offense. And I think, as Nick Chubb has gotten older, he's had more injuries, his knee will be hurt. And let's face it, DeAndre Swift is not Jahmyr Gibbs. So I would be a little bit more hesitant of saying, oh, well, he used this model in Detroit, he's going to do it again here. So I would probably just go ahead, sell him off. Like you said, that probably late 2nd range, somewhere in there. That's probably where I would end up.
Yeah, I mean, a serviceable player. He finished as RB 19 last year with the Bears. He had 253 attempts with under 1,000 yards. He had like 950, only 6 touchdowns, added 42 receptions through the air for just over 300 something yards. So he's just limited in my opinion. And I think Roshan's got a real chance to have an impact. He kind of got better as the year went on. Let's not forget they moved off of Khalil Herbert midseason to the Bengals. Like I said, they added Kyle Monangai. This offensive line is revamped. And I really think that this is going to be a team that just tries to feast and score as many points as they can. And that's probably going to benefit all of these guys. And I don't think that DeAndre Swift is the first option on this team. I think there's a world where we could see them add someone like Nick Chubb. That would not surprise me at all. J.K. Dobbins is still unsigned. Could he find his way there? I think there's a world where competition still finds its way into this backfield and kind of impacts this roster. So I just think be hesitant on whether you're going to go buy DeAndre Swift. Like I said, I see the contending compete window, but in my eyes, it's pretty short, and you're going to have to be monitoring it the entire time because it could flip pretty quick.
Well, and here's the thing too. Think about it like this, right? Like say DeAndre Swift right now, we're saying he's worth a late 2nd. As soon as one of these guys signs, if it's Dobbins or Chubb or anybody like that signs that's available that's going to vulture touches, his value automatically goes down into the 3rd, right? Like I mean his value doesn't go up. So I mean that's where I kind of get to the point where I'm just like I'd rather just sell him, take the value, get me a rookie who, has an opportunity and just kind of go from there.
Yeah. Well, we got our first super chat from Joe. Thanks, man. We appreciate that. Is ETN cooked? Well, we've got a whole segment on that, so we'll just jump straight to it. There's no point in waiting. So let's just jump into it, Tyler. One of the things we asked ourselves is, what do we do with the Jacksonville Jaguars backfield? We had ETN get drafted. They have Tank Bigsby, who kind of had that year 2 rebound this past season. I mean, ETN had, 150 carries just in his limited time, a couple injuries, but only 500 yards last year. It was really inefficient. He played poor. Whereas Tank Bigsby, he played better, 168 carries for 766 yards. This offense was just abysmal as a whole. But, Tyler, let's beg the question. Are we buying Tank Bigsby and or Travis Etienne? And in my opinion, I'm selling both of them. Here's why. The team also drafted Tootin in the 4th round. At the beginning of the 4th round, they drafted Rashul Tootin. That's a heavy investment. That's a player that I like. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got the power to run between the tackles, and he had fantastic protection at Virginia Tech, not just for 1 year, but for 2 years. I think it's time to move off. This is a new management, new coaching staff, and they went out and drafted him. And I think that their response to it is something that should be noted. I mean, like I said, this is a guy they targeted early on day 3, and I think he's going to compete. He's got the ability. I don't think that Etienne nor Bigsby are any better than he is, in my opinion. What about you, Tyler? Are you buying or selling these guys?
Yeah, so for me, I would probably sell as well. I know obviously we've kind of agreed here, so that leads to a little discussion. But here's my reasoning too, what you're saying. Travis Etienne is 26 years old, right? It's a different coaching staff when he came in. He was touted to be, Trevor Lawrence's best friend. They were going to just kind of work together. They played at Clemson, came to Jacksonville. It was just going to work. And, for the first year or two, it did. And then between injuries and whatnot, last year he didn't produce, like you mentioned, and Tank Bigsby kind of stepped up because he had to, frankly. But that first year of Tank Bigsby wasn't great either. So to me, these are both just kind of two guys here where, I could see them easily being in this committee. And like you said, this is a new coaching staff. And they brought Tootin in early day 3. And guess who Liam Cohen decided to get last year, early day 3, or 2 years ago, sorry. And that would be Mr. Bucky Irving. So, and people have kind of comped him, being explosive, kind of fast. Like you said, the 40 time was outrageous at this point. So
it's not just kind of fast; it's the fastest 40 of all the running backs. Let's not sugarcoat it.
True,
it's quick,
absolutely. And so when you get an explosive guy like that, and you're coming into this situation where it's a new coaching staff, this could be a committee or it could be Tootin that takes over. Now, granted, he was, like I said, early day 3 pick, so it's not like a second rounder where you just expect him to come in and immediately produce. So you may still have a little bit of a window here to kind of sell ETN or Tank Bigsby. But honestly, the only reason I would be buying these guys is if you can get Tootin as well. I don't want to take the shot on, trying to get one of the 3 guys and it just not work out. If it's a roster where, you do your due diligence on insurance running backs. And so like last year you had ETN, you went and got Bigsby whenever ETN wasn't performing well. And then you've got a late second, early third where Tootin's probably going to go. I would probably take him there. And that's the only situation where I'm really comfortable holding or buying these guys. But at this point, I'm out. I'll sell and I'll just watch from afar and buy later.
Yeah. And I think at best, kind of what you just said is, let's say all 3 of them are at least okay. You're just looking at a committee where they're going to be splitting workloads. Who's going to be the guy to start? It'll be probably a mess. I mean, when we look at keep, trade, cut, which again, not a fan of it, but it's something that we should consider. It's the public's opinion. Travis Etienne his value has been relatively stable over the last month or so, despite the draft capital of Tootin. So it might be time to capitalize on that. I mean, he's down 11 spots overall in running back rankings, but his overall value has remained consistent. Tank Bigsby, on the other hand, his value has dipped since the offseason, but it's still been consistent over the last month or so, and he's RB 19. So that's something that I would try and go and make a move off of. Because, again, I think Tootin has a role in this offense. I think he has the ability to make big plays. And you already mentioned that Bucky Irving-like speed and ability to just make people miss. I mean, he was, again, I can't emphasize enough, he was fantastic at Virginia Tech. And that's not something that we should necessarily overlook as we go through our rookie drafts. You can get him in the late 2nd round. I've seen him fall in the 3rd round. I've already drafted him 2 or 3 times in my leagues. So I think that he's someone I'm going to be targeting. Tyler, are you targeting him in your drafts?
Yeah, I definitely would, especially at that value. If he's got anybody, any running back especially, that has a chance to kind of take over this situation or at least get valuable playing time as a rookie, I'm definitely interested in at that price point. This is a little less impactful, I guess you should say. But I think it kind of contributes to the discussion we've had of wanting a committee or possibly having a committee. They did also draft a running back in the 7th round as well in LaQuint Allen. I thought they had drafted too. I mean, it is very late. So I don't, he may not even make the team. But I do think they're looking for multiple running backs to have a committee, or they're trying to fill some sort of role. So I think that's just kind of a little bit of insight into, maybe the mind of the Jags front office. We'll just kind of see how that works out.
And since Coach just joined the stream, it wouldn't even surprise me if ETN maybe got moved to a team like the Bears. I would love to see how he approached that and what his thoughts would be. One last thing on Tootin before we move on. His career at Virginia Tech, he had a 35% missed tackle force percentage. That's pretty dang good. That's where Genty's at. That's where Bucky's at. Those are the guys that are just elite in space. When they get you one-on-one, they start chopping those feet or heading to a certain angle, and they make that quick cut. They just make you fall to your knees. So I'm going to be targeting him. But Tyler, let's answer a couple quick questions here. Lucas asks, on the clock in the startup, would you rather have Judkins or JT?
I'm taking Judkins all day. He's
wow,
pushing.
I did not expect that.
Yeah. So here's my thing, and this is just me. This is my look. I enjoyed Quinshon Judkins' film from the time he was a freshman until this past year, whenever he came into the draft. I know I think you put out a tweet. I know we've at least talked about it, where you were talking about, taking Travion Henderson over Omarion Hampton. And so, we've kind of got the consensus top 3 before the draft, and draft capital kind of became a thing, and seeing where the price difference has been. I was almost to the point where I had Judkins and Hendo in the same tier and kind of interchangeable, honestly, for me. So I take Judkins. I mean, he just went in one of our home leagues at like the 108. I tried so hard to get somewhere close to even draft him. Was not successful, but I would take Judkins, and I think you just re-roll at this point.
Yeah, I think in a vacuum, I lean Judkins over Taylor. Depending on my team build, I'm not sure what pick you're at. If you're still in here, I'd love to know what pick it was. I would maybe lean Taylor if my build is something to compete, but I imagine it's pretty early in drafts, so you probably don't have a good mindset of where you are and what your team's going to do. But great question. I think it's a good question. Coach has a question for us, and he let me know that he was going to ask us a tough one. I know we're buying Rome Odunze before the draft. Does the add of Burton and Loveland change the value and what you would pay for Rome Odunze? I mean, that's a pretty good question, Coach. I think, does his value change? It's impacted. I think it goes down at least a little bit. You can't deny that there's more pass catchers there, but I still think he's the player that I want to go get, mainly because I think people are going to overreact to the addition of Burden and Loveland, and I'm going to capitalize on that if I can. What would I pay? I think before we were talking about the 106 to the 108. I think it's probably moved to maybe the 109 to the 112, somewhere in that range. And if I could get Rome Odunze for the 112 and I'm a competing team and I need a wide receiver, I'm absolutely doing it. I'm going to take the shot. I'm going to bet on the upside and bet on the improvement. Tyler, what about you?
Yeah. I'm kind of in agreement there.
Like,
I mean, at first, whenever I read that question, I thought it was like going to be a Jermaine Burton question. And then I saw where he said added, and I was like, okay, I know who he's talking about now. But anyway, no, I think it does kind of hurt Rome's value a little bit. I don't necessarily think, like you said, he's worth the 106 prices that we were paying before. I think if anything, we'll kind of talk about it here in a little bit. I think if anything, it hurts DJ Moore's value, definitely more so than Rome, though. So I would probably be willing to pay, like you said, like the late first, maybe like an early second, and you're probably gonna have to pay 2 early, or, seconds, or an early and mid, and go from there. But I'd probably still be buying Rome at this point. Like you said, that overreaction, people love to look at these rookies and go, oh my God, they're going to produce immediately out of the gate, and just kind of forget the young talent that's already there. I mean, look at another situation that I think is very similar is the Packers situation, right? Matthew Golden come in and everybody's like, oh, they may have their wide receiver one. At this point, I'd go by Jaden Reed if people are panicking on it. So very similar situations where rookies come in, and you still have the young talent there. So I'd still be buying at this point, just maybe a little bit of a discount.
Yeah, great question, Coach. We appreciate you for jumping in. But let's carry on, Tyler. We'll jump to our next player we're going to talk about. This is another big one. Are we buying or are we selling Chris Godwin? He got paid this offseason. We got the news earlier this week that his injury is still kind of lingering a little bit with hopes for him to be ready by week 1. I would expect him to be ready. This is kind of the consistent production that they always put out there for these injured players. But this team did draft Emeka Egbuka in the first round of the NFL draft, so there's some more competition in this room. We already saw Jalen McMillan step up at the end of this past season, had 8 touchdowns through the air, had touchdowns at the beginning of this year, and then towards the end of the season when there were some injuries for the Bucs receiving core. Big question is, are we buying or are we selling? Myself personally, unless I'm a contending team, and you need to really evaluate your roster honestly, unless you're a contending team, I would be selling Chris Godwin. He is 29 years old. Yes, he's got plenty of time. Yes, he was fantastic when he was playing. He moved back to the slot. There's question marks whether he'll stay in the slot. Will he move back out because Cohen was managing that offense? Maybe now Emeka Egbuka slides into that slot role. I think that's a real fear. Emeka Egbuka has consistently played well over his career in crowded wide receiver rooms. Every year at Ohio State, that room was loaded, and he still produced. So I think that we need to be looking towards phasing out Godwin unless you're a competing team. If you're going to be one of those top 3 or 4 teams and you're going to go win the title, I'm fine with it. Keep him. Score your points. Go get that championship. Win the money. All for it. But Tyler, what are you doing with the Chris Godwin in your leagues?
Yeah, I'm in a very similar stance here. Like you said, this is where you have to be truly honest with yourself. You have to look at your roster and say, okay, do I truly have a chance to win it? Godwin, like you said, last year, he was on a breakneck pace whenever he started. I think he was like the wide receiver 2 until he went down or something. Like, it was insane. And he looked good, then he got hurt. Like you said, though, the 29 years old, we're starting to get to that point where maybe the age cliff comes, especially when injuries happen. We've seen that happen. They've produced and produced, they get hurt, and they just never really look the same afterwards. I do think this is Mike Evans probably last year as a Buck. I think they already have Jalen McMillan kind of lined up to take his spot. I think that's kind of the same, trying to think of the word, like the phenotype, the same kind of spot. They play the same. So I think they'll end up kind of moving him there. And I think they just took Chris Godwin's replacement here, with Egbuka. I think they play very similarly. And like you said, Egbuka can produce in these crowded rooms. I know they paid Chris Godwin, so maybe they're looking at it as like, look, we're going to just ride Egbuka. He'll be our wide receiver 2 or 3, depending on, target volume and such. But, he'll be there. And then once Godwin is gone, once Evans is gone, he will step up to be, that next target. And so for me, I'll be probably selling Godwin, like you said. I'm a huge fan of Egbuka too. I mean, his film doesn't lie. Like you said, going up against the likes of Marvin Harrison, Jeremiah Smith, Chris Olave, all those guys, and still being able to produce, Garrett Wilson, like, that's an insane amount of pressure just in general. And he still, like you said, produced well over expectation in my book. So I'd be buying as much Egbuka as I can and probably be selling Godwin, unless, like Matt said, you're in that situation where you're competing. You've got a 1 or 2 year window where you're like, okay, I think he's going to bounce back from this injury and be old Chris Godwin. That's probably where I would hold him.
Yeah. I mean, he scored 113 fantasy points in just 7 games. So he was really productive. And I mean, I think we just need to step back and understand that Egbuka's runway is probably just delayed a little bit for year 1. We need to temper expectations. But even this year for Godwin, this offense is just loaded with pass catchers. I mean, we didn't even mention the running backs. They've got Bucky Irving and Rachaad White, who both catch the ball very, very well. Not to mention Cade Otton's a very, very solid tight end, and he had a great year last year. So there's a lot to go around. This Bucks offense throws the ball a lot more than other teams, so I think this is kind of where they share the load, spread the wealth. So I think Godwin can have a good year, but I would not bank on him to have a top 12 year or anything like that. He's certainly got the talent to do it, but I just think this situation with this Bucks offense doesn't necessarily give that a high probability. So for me, for Tyler, we're going to be selling Chris Godwin if we can, and try and get some value for us. If we're looking at what you might go get for Chris Godwin, I think you could probably get a mid, maybe an early second, just kind of see what your league mates think. Again, it sucks with the draft capital of Mbuka. Is it his replacement? Is he going to stay in the slot? I don't know. There's a lot of question marks, but Godwin's kind of at that point coming off this dislocated ankle where you probably should be looking to move on. But Tyler, we got some more questions in the chat, so let's go hit those before we jump to our next player. Eminem drafted Hunter and have gotten a lot of interest in him. What's his value in your opinion? Listen, man, I've been the king of saying if I'm on the clock and it's the 102, I'm taking Travis Hunter. I think his value is insane right now. I think he's got the chance to be a really, really good player. In my opinion, I think he's a fringe top 10 dynasty wide receiver overall. We have heard lots of comments from the Jaguars head coach, from their general manager, that they expect Travis Hunter to be impactful on offense and have his main role on offense where he'll be worked into the defense. So that's where we need to take into account. He is the wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, Brian Thomas is there. He'll probably have more snaps than Travis Hunter, but I think both of them can eat, and I think both of them can feast. So Travis Hunter is someone that I would not move unless I'm getting 102 type value. I mean, if you could trade him for maybe a Drake London or for an Amon-Ra or a Puka Nacua, yeah, then let's talk about what you're getting. But I'm curious to know what these offers are. So if you're still in here, Eminem, let us know. I'd be interested to know what you're getting offered, because I think right now you can get a king's ransom for him. But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily move him just because you have to.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So here's the thing about draft picks. It's kind of funny, right? So when you get these rookie picks, and let's say you drafted him at the 102, okay, whenever people look at that, they're like, oh my God, this pick is worth so much. And people are willing to go and overpay at that point. And you're in a rare case where Hunter has probably still maintained that value and maybe even exceeded it. Most of the time, if you get a player that exceeds the value of the pick when you make it, it's typically a quarterback and like a super flex because they're so rare, something like that. But if you have a wide receiver, primarily that is still able to hold that value, especially after you make the pick, then that's pretty interesting. Like Matt said, the only way I'm selling him is if I'm moving up at this point, getting something that's very similar to a 102 value. I don't necessarily think you're getting into the top tier, being Jefferson, Chase, those guys. If you can, I'd do it in a heartbeat. But I think you probably could get close to Amon-Ra, somewhere in that range. So anybody, around there, I'm not as big of a fan of Drake London. I know where he stands in the offense, but I'd probably keep Hunter over him. So anyway, that's kind of where we sit now. We got somebody from Argentina. Nice. Starting
Hello.
to follow us. Yeah. Starting to follow you and learn as much as possible. Well, congratulations.
Come to the right
Welcome
place.
in. Yeah. You're learning. Let's go. We primarily focus on Dynasty, but we do a little bit of it all. So feel free to continue to tune in. But no, back to the Hunter discussion. I mean, you talked about how he's already kind of like close to wide receiver 10 in Dynasty, not even played a snap. We've not even watched him play on an NFL field, and he's already that highly valued. So I think the comments from the coaching staff are all great. They're all rosy. We'll see how it all works out in the pecking order. I think he'll be great. But I would be kind of hesitant as far as moving. I would be interested to, like you said, Matt, to kind of hear some of those trade offers. If it's anything as far as like future first and stuff, I'd hold on to him for now because he's probably only going to go up in value.
Yeah. Just closing out everything we got here on Godwin. Jamie Duzak, Ibuka holds records at Ohio State for catches and yards, which is impressive, playing with a core of wide receivers that were there. Absolutely right. I mean, he was fantastic there. No denying that. Great player. Really like what he can do. I'm excited for the landing spot. Again, I think we're just gonna have to temper expectations, but long term, I've been saying it. I think he's the safest player in this class. He's just ready to go.
Yes.
His ceiling might not be too high, but I think his floor is really dang high. So great player. I know Tyler likes him too. Then also adds, how healthy is Godwin going to be? Great question. I mean, that's something we got to concern. Like I said, they already had the report out of they hope to have him and aim to have him ready for week 1. So that's a whole nother issue that folds into that. That's Hoff here helping us out in the chat. Appreciate you, Hoff. Thanks for being in the background with us. Jamie, do you think Gunnar Helm could be a fantasy relevant in a couple years? I did some scouting on Helm, and I'll be honest, was not my favorite player. I know a lot of people liked him more than me. I feel like he kind of got pushed around at times. He's athletic, has the ability to make some plays, but I'm personally just not in on Gunnar Helm. I don't really think that he's got a very high ceiling, in my opinion. Tyler, do you have any disagreement with me?
No, I kind of agree. He's 6'5", 241 pounds. If people don't know, he went to the Titans in the 4th round of the draft.
Yes.
Anyway, that's where he went. Sure, I mean, he may have some value. I don't see him being like a superstar level. But here's the thing you do have to realize. Most of the time when we're talking about tight ends in fantasy, you're really only caring about, probably the top 7 right now. I mean, we really don't have that many. I do not see Gunnar Helm changing that, making it a deeper class. And if you're talking about athleticism, they already have an athlete in Chigo Okonkwo there. So if that's the case, and they're going off athleticism, I'd probably take Chig over him. But, maybe it changes. We'll see. I don't personally, like you said, I don't see him being too much of a fantasy superstar for the Titans.
Yeah, I think that there's opportunity there. I mean, obviously, Chig Okonkwo is still there. He's very athletic, but for me, again, I thought there were better tight ends in this class. It's a pretty good class overall. Fannon's still there. You've got Ferg, who found his way to the Rams. Fantastic landing spot. Obviously, Mason Taylor with the Jets. Like, those are all guys that I'd rather have. I'd rather have a Rondé Gadsden, to be honest.
Yes.
Yes. I just think that there's better options than Gunnar Helm. But, if you've got the belief in him, by all means, he could hit.
Hey, that was one here.
Yeah,
that was one key thing we said, in me and Coach's video, we were talking about, dynasty rookie picks and, having conviction on players. Me and Matt talk about it all the time. If you've got a conviction on a player, you think he's going to work out, take him, obviously within a value range. Don't go drafting Gunnar Helm in the 1st round or anything crazy. But that being said, if you got conviction in the guy, then obviously go for it. But Matt brought up a very compelling name. I really liked Rondé Gadsden. He landed with the Chargers. That's somebody I would really look to late in drafts. People forget that he has NFL pedigree. People were talking about Mason Taylor all they wanted to. And people forget that Gadsden also comes from
Rondé Gadsden.
Yep. And he was probably their top target earner, or maybe 2nd target earner at Syracuse with Kyle McCord. So just something to keep an eye on late in drafts there.
Yeah, I mean, Gadsden is akin to what we're talking about with Harold Fannin. We could talk more about that. There's videos out there. Go find them. We've made some. But let's get to Eminem's offer here that he got. Got offered 226 first from a guy, and Rice and Ayuk Pickens. Reed from another. Also, like 3 more people asking how high I value him. The 26 first, I honestly would probably hold. I'd rather have Travis Hunter. Unless it's just 2 really bad teams, then maybe we can talk about it. But my next question to you is, how good is your team? If your team's competing or you think you have a chance to win, don't do any of these. I mean, yeah, Rice, Ayuk, and Pickens is interesting, but I do think that Travis Hunter's upside is incredible. I think it's really dang high.
Yeah, especially, like you said, it's team dependent here. 226 first, I probably wouldn't even entertain that right now. Even if you could say it's a guaranteed 101, and I'd probably still have to think about it. I'm kind of interested in how the rest of this breaks down. If it was Rice, Ayuk, Pickens, and Reed, like all together, that's a whole lot for Travis Hunter. I kind of read that as like I broke it up. I did Rice and Ayuk, and then Pickens and Reed as two separate trade offers. If that's the case, Rice and Ayuk, you're getting two injured players. I wouldn't do that right now. And then Pickens and Reed, as much as I may like Jaden Reed, I'm not a huge fan of Pickens, so I'd hold on to that one as well. But I think it would be interesting for sure. All those offers are good offers, especially if that one is a whole package. That is insane.
Yeah.
Somebody's trading their entire wide receiver core for Travis Hunter. So would be interesting there.
I said it earlier, and I'd say it again. If I'm moving a top 10 asset at a position or overall, I want to get a hammer back. Now he adds he's getting all four of those for Hunter. I mean, is Ayuk, Pickens, Rice, and Reed fair for Travis Hunter? Yeah, probably. I mean, it's probably the right value. But I'd still struggle to do it. You know what I mean? Like he says he has JSN. I would rather have JSN and Rice or JSN and Pickens than I'd rather have that core, to be honest.
Yeah. Now,
because at the end of the day, like you still got to compete. Go ahead.
Yeah. The only time that I would consider this, right, is if it's a league where you have to start like 12 players or something, like, and you just need depth. If you've got one player that you can turn into four startable players, especially when they come back, then you're talking about a whole different game. A lot of teams and a lot of leagues are like start 9, start 10, and you can kind of get by with that, right? Like you can kind of play around as long as your players stay healthy. You can kind of go with a locked lineup almost, as long as they're, like I said, they're healthy. So if it is a deeper bench, a deeper starting format, start 12, something like that, I might entertain it a little bit more. But I agree with Matt. You can put 4 quarters and $1 beside each other, and technically they're worth the same, but does it really help you?
Amen. I love that saying. Trade dollar for dollar, man. If you're going to move a stud, get a stud back. That's how I approach it. I know that's how Tyler approaches it, and same with Coach. So just make sure you're getting a good player back. But let's jump to our next buy sell, Tyler. And it's going to be another one of these situations where we kind of deal with what happened in the draft. Are we buying or are we selling Tyrone Tracy? Tracy had a great year one. He had a bunch of fumbles towards the end of the year that kind of got him into some trouble. He took the job from Devin Singletary, but this team made an investment into a running back that I believe the general public has a pretty high opinion on, and that's Cam Skattebo. Running back from Arizona State, who kind of carried that team to a playoff run. If you go back and watch his tape, he was fantastic, man. A heck of a player there. I think he's got a high ceiling. He's a 3-down back who's going to have the ability to step in and do anything. He's fantastic out of the backfield. He's just a player that you don't really have a lot of concerns about. Yes, Tracy has the receiving background as well, but Cam Skattebo had 1,700 rushing yards this past year. He had 21 rushing touchdowns. He had 44 catches out of the air. Like, he's not necessarily got that speed that's going to blow you away. Yes, there's question marks about his 40 time. I don't care. Go watch the tape, man. He runs through people, around people, over people. It doesn't matter. He finds a way to score. There's plenty of times where he gets the ball in his hands and you just stop and go, how the heck does anybody do anything? And he'll gain 5 yards or he'll go and score. It's incredible tape to watch. He's a heck of a player. You're not going to find a person that has more effort than Cam Skattebo in the backfield. So I think this definitely impacts Tyrone Tracy's value and probably his snaps and his opportunities. I would be selling Tyrone Tracy. I mean, this offseason, we talked about it. It's time to move on. His value got over a first-round pick. People are paying premium price for Tyrone Tracy, and here we go. They already drafted another player. It's going to get murky there, and I think Cam Skattebo is going to be a guy that can walk away with this job.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there at all. I mean, we're talking about Cam Skattebo. A lot of people did really like him, liked his tape. He got to the point where people were kind of mocking him pretty high. He was up there with the likes of Judkins and all the guys, maybe not necessarily in the first round, but when people were talking about that, like second round, third round, they, expected him to possibly come off the board there. So it is interesting. He does definitely make the waters a little murky there. I'd probably be holding on to Tracy right now. If I had to pick, I did try to kind of acquire him from you earlier, but it was like a kind of like a fair trade kind of deal, where it was like I was sending Aaron Jones, who, yes, he's still kind of by himself with the Vikings now, but he is getting up there in age. So for me, I'd probably hold him. If you're getting first round picks out of Tyrone Tracy, though, you sell him all day. That's easy value to accrue there, especially for somebody that you think is going to lose opportunities and stuff. I will say this: he was competing with Devin Singletary last year, so he probably got a good portion of the like goal line chances, or he could still house one, from a little ways out. But that being said, I think the goal line work will probably go to Skattebo because, like you said, he runs hard. He plays faster than his 40 time. Nobody's going to out effort him on the field as far as like running backs or anything like that goes. So he will make every effort to get into the end zone. The one thing that, I am kind of worried about is maybe, like you said, if they make it a committee and it's the Giants. I'm not super in on this offense right now. They did get a new quarterback in Jackson Dart. They still have Malik Neighbors. So maybe they find a way to kind of turn things around. But at this point, most of the time, if you want a running back in a committee, you kind of want like top 10 teams, or at least top half of the league teams in terms of scoring. That kind of is the way those trends kind of work out. Usually those are the guys you want. So for me, I'm probably holding, most likely selling if I have to pick between a buy or sell. And just kind of see where the backfield shakes out in terms of a committee with Skattebo.
Yeah, I think if it turns to a committee, I honestly think it benefits Skattebo more than it benefits Tracy. I think he has the ability to do more things. You got to remember, Tracy is a lot like Antonio Gibson, where he made that transition from wide receiver over to running back. And that's not as easy as we make it out to be. Yes, they're great out of the backfield. They can catch the ball. They can make moves in space. But sometimes these guys have fumbling issues. That's the exact same thing that had happened to Antonio Gibson. We saw him get run out of Washington because of that bench several times. Happened with New England too. So I'm not sure that that's a player that I would necessarily want to hitch my wagon to. I think the draft capital of Cam Skattebo is important.
Ooh.
I mean, again, it's at the beginning of the fourth round. It was an early pick. It was right after Tootin went to Jacksonville. That's investment that I'm going to pay attention to. Yes, it's a day 3 pick, but it still matters, especially in this situation where we saw Tracy was a day 3 pick himself, and he had immediate impact. So why can't Cam Skattebo do that?
Yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Skattebo was like 105, and I think I looked it up. I think Tracy was like 166. So technically, if you're looking at it, he was picked beforehand, previous to Tracy. So, if you're looking at numbers and you're like, oh well, they might prefer this guy more or whatever. I do think, like you said, it was a good shout. Being right after Tootin, maybe the Giants looked and were like, okay, listen, this guy we had both these guys on our board. And Tootin just went, so we feel like we got to take Skattebo now and not miss out on him. So,
yeah. Well, jumping back to Eminem's offer here, he has a pretty solid team with Josh Allen, A-Chain, Josh Jacobs, Amon-Ra, Ladd, DK Jonnu, Diggs, Hunter, Demo Pollard, Ridley, Myers. Again, I think I agree with what Pete says here. Your team is good. You have depth. Don't trade away the top tier players just so your teams can score, 70 or 80 points. You want to go out and you want to score, 120 points each week. So that's what I would do if I was in your position. What's going on, Brewer? Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you, buddy. Let's go. Skattebo is a beast, but I'm still on Tracy. I mean, I can't blame you, Hoff, if you're still wanting to have some sort of share of Tracy. Welcome back, Tyler.
I don't know
but
why.
I do think that we just temper expectations a little bit. Because I do think that the workload's going to be eaten into. I mean, let's not forget that this team we saw last year with Mara on Hard Knocks if he was going to have a stroke if we got rid of Saquon Barkley. And, they drafted Tracy and he was serviceable, but it was certainly not the running back field that they were looking for. And I think the addition of Cam Skattebo is something that's only going to help this roster.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it elevates the roster for sure. We'll just kind of have to see how it plays out for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, well, let's carry on. We've got one more buy sell that we're going to hit, and it's another one that was, again, impacted by the draft. That's kind of the theme of tonight, and that's going to be what are we doing with Jaylen Warren. Is he a buy? Is he a sell? I think right now what we need to be focused on with Jaylen Warren is the capital that was invested at running back. Yes, they drafted on day 2 Caleb Johnson from Iowa, another running back that, in my opinion, fills that Najee Harris role. He's going to have the ability to step in, make plays, run the ball, pound the rock between the tackles. Warren's a great serviceable third down back, change of pace running back, but in my opinion, he's not that guy that's going to lead this roster and carry the workload. I think Caleb Johnson finds himself in a fantastic situation, whether you believe in his production or his profile. I don't really think it matters. I think he's going to get the opportunity. And what we know at the running back position is opportunity is everything. We just finished talking about Tyrone Tracy, who stepped into that role and was serviceable. Yes, he's being phased out, but the third round capital invested by the Steelers into this position, I think says it all. They moved on from Najee. It's a contract year for Jaylen Warren. He's not even guaranteed to be back. What we do know is that Caleb Johnson has the ability to be a 3-down back. He is a bigger running back like Najee that can withstand that workload. Remember, Najee Harris has never missed a game in his career. I think Caleb Johnson was drafted for similar reasons. I think Caleb Johnson can step into this role, absorb all of Harris's workload, and do the exact same things. Najee was serviceable. So I think that Caleb Johnson is going to take this job, and I would be selling off of Jaylen Warren if I can. Because, again, I don't think there's a really high ceiling for him. Yes, last year wasn't too bad, but I just don't see it, Tyler. Are you buying or are you selling Jaylen Warren?
No, I've never really been a big Warren believer. I always liked Najee a little bit better. We say it a lot. Your best ability is availability, and that's what Najee was. I mean, he was always there. So I was always a little bit higher on him. Even people, would say, "Oh, well, Warren is so much more explosive." All this, that, and the other. It doesn't matter, in the grand scheme of things, if you've still got somebody that's able to play 17, 18 games, or whatever, and just touch their way all the way up rankings. So I do think you're correct. I think Caleb Johnson was drafted at 6'1", 224. I think he was drafted to be Najee's replacement. If you heard the Mike Tomlin press conference from where they drafted him, Mike Tomlin seems stoked to have this guy on his team. Last year he ran for 1,537 yards, 21 touchdowns on only 240 carries. That's a 6.4 yard per carry. Whether you like his profile or not, he produced. And in an offense where you've got the Steelers. They like to run the ball. They always have. They've been a very defensively minded team. They love to run the ball, especially when you get around the goal line. And I think he will be the guy in there, as much as he can. And Coach brings up a good point here. The passing attack. They've got DK and they've got Pickens, but who's throwing the ball? We still don't know that. Is it Mason Rudolph? Is it Will Howard, who they took in the 7th round? What do we have here? So I think they will end up, running the ball pretty heavy here to start the season, especially. And I think Caleb Johnson will get a lot of workload, especially as the season goes on.
Yeah. And I mean, Warren, too, this past year, only 120 attempts on the ground for 511 yards. So the production's not there. The opportunity's not there. Yes, he had the 38 receptions on 47 targets. He's going to continue to have that. I would expect his workload to probably look the exact same because it's not that different than it was the year before. Only 149 opportunities. He was more efficient on the ground 2 years ago with almost 800 yards. But I just don't think that Jaylen Warren is the long-term plan of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like you said, defensive-minded team, want to run the ball, want to possess the ball, run the clock. That's what they've done for years. They're winning these ugly games where you turn on the TV and you're, oh my gosh, it's 17-14, or maybe Chris Boswell hits 5 straight field goals to win the game. Like they did that last year. So I think that's going to continue to happen. And Caleb Johnson, like Coach said, draft him. He's the guy that can carry the workload for this offense. Jamie asked us the question, Caleb Johnson or Harvey is a serious debate. I'm totally with you. If you go watch drafts right now, like I said, I think I've got 6 current drafts. I bet it's split 50-50 on who's been drafted first, Harvey or Caleb Johnson. Caleb Johnson got the lower draft capital. Harvey went in the 2nd round. Johnson went in the 3rd. It seems like they're pretty bullish on Harvey. They went out and sought him. I mean, there are several teams that released tapes and clips where they were also going after Harvey. The Jags were one of those teams. But in my opinion, I think I'd rather have Caleb Johnson. It seems like the safer play for me. We've got Faceoff here saying they'd rather have Harvey. I don't know if that's Hoff or Pete, but one of the two of them would rather have Harvey. There's opportunity there too. I mean, he's better out of the backfield, probably catching the ball. You could argue a better offense. I mean, I think we all agree that the Broncos are better than the Steelers. Like you mentioned, the quarterback issues in Pittsburgh, but just the ability for him to run the ball, like it would not shock me if Caleb Johnson had 20 carries a week and, averaged 90 yards a week.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to get those kind of stat lines. I think Harvey probably has a little bit more like explosiveness. And I also don't think he has the competition. Although we sit here and say sell Jalen Warren, I mean, he's still competition. I think he's probably better competition than anything that RJ Harvey has. You brought up a good point about the draft capital. And we have seen Sean Payton running backs obviously produce. I did see some stat. I want to say it was on X like yesterday, the day before. It was talking about the list of running backs where they were drafted in like the second round or whatever their production was. It was a very elite list. Like Kamara was on that list, as well as some other guys. And so if Sean Payton really holds him in high regard, I'm all about Harvey. Coach did mention here, Harvey's 24, Caleb is 21. Sure, in Dynasty, you might be missing out on a few years here, but really you should be playing in 2 to 3 year windows and not looking at, oh, well, he's 21. I'm going to have him for 7 years, especially as a running back. You're probably not going to own that guy for that long. So for me here, I think it's more about team fit, other than like age and, some possible production stuff. So I would probably lean Harvey a little bit. I'm actually might have this decision to make later in a draft. So we'll see. Well, who knows? So
Stay tuned on that one. I want to speak for a second on the age. I know Coach has made several comments with me about whether age matters. We've gone back and forth on this. I want to start by saying age absolutely does matter. When these running backs hit, 27, 28 is when you kind of want to think about moving off of them. Thank you, Hoff, for being in the background. We appreciate you. But I do think that we're kind of overreacting, or at least I believe that Coach is overreacting to the Harvey is 24. I mean, Harvey was a position switch from quarterback to running back, so maybe he's got fresh legs. But even beyond that, I mean, 24 as a rookie, do we really want to sit here and, in his second or third season and go, oh man, he's 26, it's time to move on? No, you're playing in 2 to 3 windows. I'm trying to win my league. I'm not worried about moving off of these running backs at a certain age, more at a certain time frame in their contract and team situation. Mm-hmm. That's what you need to monitor. And in my opinion, I think when we see Harvey find his landing spot with the Denver Broncos, I don't care if he's 24. I want the running back. And if he's the 3-down back or even the head of a committee in Denver, which is a high-scoring, prolific offense, I want that position. I want that player. Because if he can give me fantasy production, which he can because he can catch the ball, then I think that's someone that you can play for 3 years. And once that 3 years is up, then monitor. Is your team competing? Okay, well, then there's a reason to keep him. Is your team rebuilding? There's a reason to move him. Then you can factor in the age. Is he going to get that new contract? Did he sign a new contract? Those are all questions that you have to ask and answer at the time. I think worrying about that now, it shouldn't be a factor. Can it be the determining factor for you between Johnson and Harvey? Maybe. I'll give you the shot of if you're between those two players and that's what you want to use to split the baby, go for it. I'm not going to fault you, but in my opinion, I don't necessarily think that's what we should be doing to determine which player we're going to draft over the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing to point out too is we've talked about it multiple times. You've kind of seen a theme here of these teams are starting to go towards a committee more and more often. So if you're going towards a committee, one, like we said, you want the better offense. That's just off rip. You want the better offense regardless. Okay. Number two, how many now I'm not saying.
Oh, we might have lost Tyler for a second. We'll let him come back. But I think that's a pretty good summary of what we're doing with Harvey on our teams. There you go. You're back. I don't know what happened. We lost you for a second.
Okay. Am I back? Goodness
go ahead.
Gracious.
The floor is yours.
What I was saying, what I was saying is if these teams are going into committees and stuff like that, right? You want the better offense, obviously, but two, how many times have we seen these older running backs kind of keep their value and play longer? Obviously Derrick Henry is a different one person, but he's playing into his 30s and still doing great. Kamara is still doing great, and he was used in a committee for years. We are always, fussing about it whenever it was him and Mark Ingram and whoever else, but it happens every year. And so the longer that we have these committees that kind of stay in, you could easily see these running backs stay around for longer and longer. And like I said, he's not necessarily elite yet, but if you're going to give me a rookie, especially a rookie contract on a high-powered offense that we expect the Broncos to be, then I will take that all day, every day over a middling offense in the same kind of situation.
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple questions in here from Jamie. So if you guys are still hanging out with us, be sure to like that stream. Be sure to comment your questions. We will certainly answer those. If you're on the clock, if you got a trade, if you got a rookie question, ask us. This is all we've been doing for months. So we are pretty well versed in it right now. But Jamie asked us, excuse me, wrong one. My fault. Let me get to that question. Where'd it go? Here we go. Can Howard be the next Brock Purdy? I think that's a great question. Here's what Coach would say if he was with us is he's got the opportunity to. This team currently does not have a quarterback. Will they sign Aaron Rodgers? Maybe. Do I think Will Howard has a chance to play? He certainly does. I've talked about this a few times, but in drafts, if I have a bunch of third-round picks or even fourth-round picks for that matter, I like to take them on these quarterbacks because these guys, once they get into roles, you never know what could happen. It could be Brock Purdy, or it could be a guy that has some serviceable playing time. Sam Howell was worth value at some point in time. Gardner Minshew's been worth something. Aiden O'Connell.
Yep.
If the quarterback gets the opportunity to play, especially in superflex leagues, their value immediately goes up. So if you draft, Howard at the fourth round, like with the 8th pick, there's a chance you could flip him for a second-round pick midseason just because he gets the opportunity to play. Should he find his way on the field, there's absolutely a runway for him. He's got 2 wide receivers, whether we believe in them being elite or not. They're serviceable. They've got the running back room we've talked about. The defense is there. The offensive line's not the worst. So I think Howard's someone that should probably be drafted or at least on someone's roster just to kind of see what happens. Throw him on that taxi squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like we said, he has the opportunity, right? That's all you can ask for. Now, is it as well of a managed franchise as, like the 49ers? Yeah. See, there you go. Is it as well as the 49ers have been ran? No, it is not. They've been middle of the pack with Tomlin at the helm. That's what the Steelers fans all want to argue about, even though you've had a winning season every season for like the last decade, it feels like. That being said, he absolutely has the opportunity. Matt hit the nail on the head. These late third, fourth round picks, spend them on the quarterbacks, put them on a taxi squad for at least a year. Just kind of feel it out. This is not like the prime scenario, but even Spencer Rattler was worth something last year whenever he played and started games. And he was drafted hardly anywhere or at the very end of drafts. And you could move him at some point. He did have value. They got him off the waiver wire. Even if he's worth fab, it's value, right? You may use that fab to pick up a league winner at some point. So always be ready, to draft, take those shots. Like we said, they're a quarterback away. Now there's people that have said, oh, well, they didn't take Shador earlier because they know that Aaron Rodgers is coming to town. If that's the case, okay, that's fine. But guess what? I don't really believe in Aaron Rodgers anymore. I think he's phasing out. I don't think he's the Aaron Rodgers of old at this point. So I still think Howard would have a chance. And at worst, he sits for a year or two and learns behind Aaron Rodgers. Okay, I'll take that. That's fine. So take your shot on him. I don't necessarily think he's Purdy level, but that's just because of the situation.
Yeah. Hoff says Slick Rick's reporting that Amari Cooper's trying to go back to the Raiders. I'm not too interested in that, in my opinion, to be honest. I think it'd be fun for him to go back to the Raiders and he could kind of mentor Jack Besh and kind of change that culture and that wide receiver room. But if we're expecting fantasy production, I'd probably keep it at a minimal. He wasn't very helpful last year for the Buffalo Bills, and he struggled before that too. I mean, he's just kind of at that age cliff, but a fantastic player with a great career. So we'll see what happens with him. But Coach does ask the question, is drafting Shedeur Sanders at the 2-3 turn or the second and third round, but should we actually be drafting Dylan Gabriel? Great question. I mean, I think Gabriel's kind of got a noodle for an arm. I think Shedeur's got better arm talent. The biggest question is, what do we do with that quarterback room? What happens with the entourage and all the chaos that follows from Shedeur and this whole draft debacle? Personally, I'm not really interested in drafting either one of them. I think I may have drafted Shedeur Sanders one time, but I think it was in the fourth round of a 1 QB league. So I wouldn't really say that was too much of anything, more of just a shot of you never know.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I believe in Shedor's talent more so than Gabriel. He does have much more draft capital, like Coach points out. I think a lot of Shedor's statistics, they were probably not manufactured per se, but I think they were at least padded to some point by, short game, like screens and whatnot. He did get sacked at a very high rate, and I think that was a huge knock on his profile. People, like, I think scouts probably picked up on the fact that he held the ball a little bit too long whenever he didn't necessarily need to. He could have thrown it away, but I think, he was thinking, okay, well, my completion percentage is here. I need to try to keep it there, and maybe took too many sacks. If I'm picking one, I'm probably picking Shedeur. I know he is the later draft capital, and the reaction in the draft room was a whole lot less happy-go-lucky when they showed the cams of the coaches and stuff there. I'd probably take him just as a shot on talent. I didn't really like Dylan Gabriel that much, especially even in college. But I do think Coach brings up another good point. He understands progressions. He's been around the system. He's been with his dad his entire life. His dad's always been his coach. He knows how to play defense, obviously. And so I think he's taught him from a young age how to read defenses and everything. And I think if he can clean up the footwork, like Coach says, all that, I think he can actually be decent. And I think he has time to kind of learn too, in the Browns offense. So let's just see what it goes. I would take a shot on Sanders before I would Gabriel.
Yeah. I think it's something that he can correct. Like Coach mentions the footwork. I'm not a quarterback guru, Coach, and I watched a lot of Shedeur's tape together. If I can spot it, that's a problem. It's something that you can see pretty easily when you throw on a game. You mentioned there's a lot of just gadgety plays and screens and just, I mean, there's no way around it. They were running up the score or they were trying to pad stats all the time. Whether it was for that purpose or just because that's what they were the best at, I don't know. But I watched Colorado in person. I watched them on TV, and a lot of times it was just the same thing over and over and over. This offense was not very good. The line was terrible. He was running for his life a lot of times. But you're absolutely right. He held onto the ball way too long. There was a lot of times where he had the ball in his hands and he should have thrown it away, and he just simply didn't. And that is something you cannot do in the NFL. I mean, you got to get rid of the ball. You can't take negative yards because the NFL is so different. It's such a field possession game. These guys are playing chess, not checkers. So you really got to take care of the ball. Got to protect the field, get field position when you can, and live to fight another down. And Shedeur, frankly, at a lot of times just didn't necessarily do that.
Yeah, and you can't get behind the sticks early, right? Like, that's the one thing you can't do. If you decide to throw it on first or second down, you can't be, second and 15. You're already put yourself in advantage whenever these defenses can, change up schemes.
Yeah,
definitely something to keep in mind.
Well, we are at the hour and 15 mark almost. We appreciate everyone that's been in here. Be sure to like the stream, keep commenting. We'll answer your questions for just a little bit longer. We've finished all of our buy sells. So Tyler, I think I just want to transition a little bit, a sneak peek, if you will, at some players that we are kind of targeting in late rounds of Dynasty, or maybe some sleepers that we have. I know you've got one that I want to hear you talk about. A certain Seattle Seahawk wide receiver that steps into possible opportunity. DK Metcalf's on the move. Tyler Lockett's on the move. Yes, JSN has that ascension, but there's a certain wide receiver that went to Colorado State. And who's that, Tyler? Why should we pay attention to this young man?
Yeah. So the wide receiver that Matt's talking about is Torrey Horton. I really liked his tape coming out of college. He was hurt several times, I think, and he really kind of broke out against that televised game between Colorado and Colorado State that first year. He showed up and showed off real quick. Now, it could be because of the offensive scheme that they were running there. Maybe it's something like that. But I do believe, and somebody that you're looking at sleeper, we're not saying he's going to be a go-getter. He's not going to be a top 10 guy, nothing like that. But I do think if you're looking at somebody just to take a shot on in the late rounds, Torrey Horton is somebody to keep an eye on, especially if Cooper Kupp turns out that, he's lost a step, something like that. I don't expect that. He could easily step in. I do think he has great feet. I think he's a good route runner, and I think he can catch the ball, pretty well. So somebody to keep an eye on. Matt, do you have one that you're eyeing to start?
Yeah, I've got a few that I've certainly been touting. Some of them are out there on X. I am going to throw one out here because I think Coach is still hanging out with us, and that's Kyle Monangai. We've already mentioned him a little bit. Running back from Rutgers who finds his way with the Bears. I think he steps in the possibility of having a workload, and this is someone I think a lot of times you're going to be able to pick up off waivers. So if I have the 312 and there's an opportunity that I want to chase, don't necessarily like any of the guys on the board, I'm going to go with Kyle Monangai. I think he's got the possibility to, again, step into a role with this offense. And not just that, I think with Ben Johnson, we've already seen a two-headed monster. So I think there's going to be ability to have that guy that can just run between the tackles. He can do that. He can be the hammer on this offense. Yes, Roschon got better. I think Roschon has a chance too, but he's already had that runway and he didn't necessarily do it. I knew Jamie was going to come back and say, Roschon Johnson season. Completely agree. Like, he's got the opportunity to do it. But, man, let me tell you, if he doesn't do it, I think Monangai is going to take his dang job. If you go watch the tape, very, very productive at Rutgers. Great running back out of New Jersey. Historic high school he went to. So I like Monangai in this situation. He's one of my dynasty sleepers. I know I'm stealing it from Coach because it's Coach's guy do, but we'll let him have his day another time. That's what he gets for not being on stream. Brewer says, good night, gents. Good night, sir. We appreciate you for being in here. We'll catch you next time. JJ asked us a question, Tyler. Says, if you're in a win now window, would you trade for CMC? Excellent question. A little bit risky. What are we going to do with the injuries? Offense and that team are just completely revamped. They made some investments on the line. What line? That defensive line. If Hoff's still in here, I'm sure he can attest that. I feel like they drafted 37 defensive tackles and defensive ends. I could be wrong on that number, but 37 feels pretty strong in my opinion. But yeah, I think if I'm a competing team, I would take the shot on Christian McCaffrey. The question is, what are you going to pay? If you can go get him for a mid to late second and you are a competitive team, totally fine with it. Totally fine with it. If you are a questionable team and you're sitting here, can I win it? Is Christian McCaffrey the piece that I need? I think you should look other ways. Hoff, he's in the background, not biased as a 49 fan, says go get CMC. I think as long as you can do that, I would do it. But again, I think you just need to know your team.
Yeah, I agree. It's all about the price point, right? Like if you're getting him in the second round, which you may at this point with him being injured several years, I doubt it. But if you can get him in for a second round pick, I would probably go do it. I'm not huge on it. Late first, he kind of adds here. That's a little rich
you're
for
asking
me.
Yourself, would you rather have Caleb Johnson or CMC? That or Harvey or CMC? That's the question you're going to have to ask yourself.
Here's the thing is like it's CMC now. And I think the biggest thing is a lot of people say CMC. Well, I'd rather have CMC. That's if he's healthy. And, years ago, CMC, we're not talking about the guy who's coming off like Achilles, issues and stuff like that. And it was originally one. Let's not forget what happened. It was originally one that they were like, it's not that big of a deal. And Kyle Shanahan even said that. And then it kind of progressed and like, oh, okay, well, we might need to take this a little bit seriously. Then it became both legs. So then they were just like, okay, we're just going to shut him down. So like he's kind of getting older. He has a lot of work under his belt. He was used as a bell cow all over the field in Carolina. He then went to the 49ers. He was used there very heavily as well. So he does have a lot of tread on the tire, or not a lot of tread on the tires left. Sorry. But it's kind of tough at that point. If you're going late first, like Matt said, you're looking at Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, these guys that haven't played. You could also probably get a serviceable running back for that pick that's probably in a better spot, both age
James
wise
Cook,
and injury wise. James Cook. I was going Josh Jacobs. That's where my head went.
Josh Jacobs.
So
Yeah,
that
I
something
think
like
you could
that.
even get a plus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, probably so. So, at this point, I would look at guys like that. He's talking about he needed a running back, he needed a trade. So look kind of there, look in that range. The James Cooks, the Josh Jacobs. If you're trying to get out for cheaper than that and you want just production, go look at Alvin Kamara. Somebody like Aaron Jones, they're older, maybe
James
not
Conner.
necessarily James Conner. James Conner has been great, especially when he plays. Last year I think was the first year he played all 17 games and maybe his entire career since college. So, but I will say, there's several options there that you can get for similar value, especially late first. Don't just kind of pigeonhole into CMC and think, oh, well, I have to buy off the injury. That's kind of where I would put my reservations there.
So he drafted Caleb Johnson and Scat. His RB1 is B. Robinson. I hope that's Bijan Robinson, not Brian Robinson. If it's Bijan, then I feel more comfortable with that room. If it's Brian Robinson, totally with you. You probably need to try and find someone else to add to it. Like Tyler said, I think you could take a first. Another name we didn't even mention, and I think his value has fallen to the point where we should all be buying him. And maybe this is a time where we do a buy sell on Kyren Williams. I mean, coach is obsessed with Kyren Williams. Yes, they added Jaquez Hunter from Auburn. Yes, Blake Corum's there, but we're at the point where his value has kind of fallen, in my opinion. And we get this every year where we get rookie fever, Tootin, Skattebo, Harvey, Judkins, Hampton, Henderson. These are all names that a lot of people are putting ahead of Kyren Williams. And frankly, I think that's a mistake. Coach has said it time and time again. Not all of these players are going to hit. Yes, this running back class is awesome, but a lot of these guys that got drafted, especially on day 3, even the ones we've talked about, they just don't necessarily always hit. Can you pull up my Jay Hunter question? Yeah, let me go find it. Hoff, if you're still in here, can you help me find that question? See if we can find Jaquez Hunter. Anything we can talk about, I think, is worth it. But go ahead, Tyler. I mean, what's your thoughts on Kyren Williams? Do you think that's someone we should be looking at to buy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, me and you bought him on a team we co-manage. We bought him at a good price. People were low on him. We said, you get those rookie running backs. Everybody gets rookie fever, and this is the time when rookie drafts, especially, you can start building your team and making moves for value, right? Like some people want to get in the first round so bad that they're willing to trade guys that are worth 2 firsts or a first and a second, and they're just leaving value on the board. Kyren is a great example of that. If you let's say you got to let's say 107, 106, 107, somewhere in that range where you still got the choice between Judkins and all those guys. Sure, I believe in Judkins as much as probably just about anybody, right? But at the same time, I've watched Kyren do it already on a better offense. And like we said, if you're getting these guys in possible committees or anything like that, you just want the better offense. So give me the Rams offense with Kyren, who I've watched do it for years at this point, versus an unproven rookie who, as much as I may like him, he may not work out. So, I would take Kyren in a heartbeat, especially if somebody's really low on him. Just kind of feel around. There are players out there, even if you may think they're not available, they may be more attainable than you think.
Yeah. Kyren only has 1 year left, so is Hunter a taxi stash for next year? I mean, I think he is. I think he's a player that generally is probably going to be on waivers at the end of your drafts. I mean, maybe he gets drafted in the 4th round. It's kind of going to be a crapshoot because there was so many running backs. There's a good chance Martinez is one like that. Hunter, my Washington Commanders drafted Jacory. He's someone that I think could be drafted or taken off waivers at the end. So there's going to be a lot of guys that kind of fall. One of them will probably hit. The question is who. Obviously, Hunter has to deal with Blake Corum, who had that third-round capital last season. Didn't necessarily amount to much of anything. Who's the better player between Hunter and Corum? I don't know. Is it worth a stash? Probably, but I don't think that there should be a lot of expectations for him. Kyron has been really serviceable, scored a crap ton of touchdowns. Coach gets really mad when people talk negatively about Kyron Williams because he just can't seem to see a reason why. He's one of those players that's not going to blow you away with breakaway speed or big plays, but he is just consistent. He is a chain mover and just constantly grinds. Finds his way in the end zones a lot. There's a role for someone to step in. It's a McVay offense, so everyone's going to want a shot. But Hunter's a stash for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you saw they tried to get Corum involved a little bit last year. I don't think he necessarily looked the best. And so at that point, they went back to Kyron and they just gave him all the work. And I think that goes to show that they probably wanted somebody to spell him a little bit. And he's still on the roster. It's not like he's gone anywhere. But if he's on waivers at this point, you might as well pick him up, throw him on your taxi squad. It's not gonna hurt. So there's no risk at that point. One mention that, we were talking about all these running backs that are possibly on the taxi squad, stuff like that, or late in drafts. One name to keep a mention on, I used somebody else, from Seattle earlier. But one idea or one player to keep a mention on is Jaden Blue. He went to the Cowboys. He has Javonte Williams in front of him, who has not looked great for years at this point after his, horrible knee injury. If you want somebody who has opportunity in an offense that should be good and is still available, kind of late in drafts, I would look at Jaden Blue all day long. That's a guy that you definitely want to throw on taxi squad, stash, do whatever you need to do. But somebody just to keep an eye on in the back of your mind, say, okay, I probably need to prioritize this guy at some point.
Yeah, I'll be honest, man. I have no clue what to do with Blue. He's fast. He's quick. He's great out of the backfield. I mean, he could take a screen 1,000 miles if he had to, and I think he would break every single tackle. Can he run between the tackles? Not quite as successful. But what does Dallas do? I mean, they did bring in Javonte Williams. We know what he's been. We know what he is. I'm not really sure that I'm ready to commit to Blue as being the guy, but I do think he's going to have a shot. I think that Jaden Blue is someone in Dallas that's going to have a role. He's probably going to be used as that third down back. We've seen him use the committee. Rico Dowdle's gone. So there's opportunity for him to step up. I just am not sure how much he's actually going to get on that runway to really go and do things. He asked 4.3. Is that in reference to his 40 time? I'm sorry.
I missed it was, I think. Yeah, it should be. He was right at 4.3. He was right there with Tootin. I think he actually might have been even a little bit faster. He's real close, if not. So
he ran a 4.38. Tootin ran a 4.33, I believe. So pretty quick. One of the faster times at the combine. Now it was reported that he ran a 4.25. If my power goes out, it's storming here. So sorry. He ran a 4.25. So I think there's a world where at his pro day, I'm not necessarily going to count that personally. Pro day clocks tend to be a little more beneficial for these players than reality. We can't really skew that combine time.
Yeah, no, you can't. When they're all on level playing fields and you've got, they're as similar conditions as you're going to get, they're running back to back, you have to, that's the way they do it for a reason, to compare. You know what I mean? So, it's definitely something to keep in mind, but he is fast. I think that pick is probably more a little bit about opportunity and who he has around him. But just somebody to keep in mind. I know we were talking about people to keep an eye on earlier, late in drafts. So I just wanted to bring his name up there.
Certainly a sleeper. I mean, I'm in a league right now. He was drafted at the 304. I've seen him be drafted at the 210, and I've seen him be drafted at the 309. So I just went through all my drafts while you were doing your initial intro, Tyler. So his value is kind of all over the place. Where it ends up when we wrap up the season, we'll have to see. But he's another player that I think falls into this list of running backs that could be something. But we do have another question here from Little Baby K. Sorry for making you wait, my friend. But let's jump into this and then we'll get out of here. So if you got any questions, throw them in there now. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes. He says, hey, y'all, have no RB2. Jordan Mason is his best. That's some dark days. Brees Hall is his RB1. 201 is the earliest pick this year. Should I be trying to sell my 2026 pick for a running back, or selling Brees for the 104 to 106, or just hold? Great question. I mean, we did a video, I'm going to say 2 weeks ago on Brees Hall, and I think we said we were all buying him. I still think that Brees Hall is the buy, in my opinion. Your value, I would say, is really between the 106 to 108, so pretty close. Would I sell him? Probably not. If you can get a plus, then I would entertain it. Let's say you get the 106 and the 207. Maybe you could take Henderson there. But I wouldn't do that move unless I know I'm going to get a running back. Brees right now is your bell cow, and you kind of need him more than you have to offer. Would I sell my 2026 pick to go get a running back? That depends. And that depends largely on what does the rest of your roster look like. The 201, you can get a formidable running back. Caleb Johnson is typically available, or RJ Harvey is typically available. So you'll have your chance to get one guy who's going to step into an opportunity, step into what we presume to be the job. But the 2026 is really the tough part for me. I think this is where we go back to what Tyler was saying earlier. Maybe take a 2026 second or a 2026 third and see if you can go get one of those vets like Alvin Kamara or James Conner. Are they sexy picks? No, but they're picks that are going to help you right now. He adds to this wide receiver room is absolutely stacked. Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, Rice, BTJ. Love that wide receiver room. That's great.
Absolutely.
If your quarterbacks and tight end are set, then yeah, that kind of pushes me towards, all right, let's see what we can do to win. Now, I would emphasize that you don't have to move that 2026 pick today. It is only April 29th. There is plenty of time between now and the season. So if you end your draft, which I would even encourage that, unless someone's getting trigger happy on some picks, maybe they're rebuilding or tanking, then I would hold my pick, wait till the draft is over, and go get, whatever's available at the 201. Attack those running backs in your third round of your draft. Go get value where you can get it. Reassess after the draft and make your move.
Yeah, I mean, that's great advice. The one thing that we make a point of saying every year is these first round picks, they only go up in value. They never go down. Now, you'll have these little weird spots in the off season when people are nitpicking every prospect and they're like, "Oh, well, this class is not as deep as we thought it was." Well, guess what? It doesn't matter. Whenever the rookie draft comes around, people still want the pick, because guess what? The NFL draft has happened. We've got the rookie hype again. We're all on rookie fever watch. So, it happens every year. The 2026 first, like Matt said, you have a great wide receiver room. It's going to depend on your quarterbacks. It's going to depend on your tight end. If you're truly competing, then I would be, going to look at some guys like maybe Josh Jacobs, James Cook, those guys, stuff like that. And the thing about it is as the off season goes on, we get into training camp and stuff, your pick becomes the first next year. And guess what? It instantly gains value. And while all these veterans may pick up more value as they get, the videos on X or whatever of like, oh, look at him training, look at how good he looks for his age, all this, that, and the other. That sure, their value will go up, but guess what? Your first is probably still going to be more valuable. And there will always be somebody willing to bet against you, most likely. So they'll overestimate how good your first may be, and you may prove them wrong at that point. So hold off on the 2026 first pick now. The 201, like Matt said, you've got great options there. Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, those guys are probably going to be available. If something happens, that you get to the point where you're like, oh man, I'm really going to miss out on these guys. If you have a plethora of picks, you can always take the 201, package it with something, and move it up. Even if it's like a third next year or something like that, you can always do that as well.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. That's what I would do too. Last question here for us. Jamie's on the clock, 409. This is a big time pick. We got to get it right. We can't mess this up. Jordan James, Taj Brooks, Pat Bryant, Ewers, or Restrepo. The answer is absolutely easy for me. It's Taj Brooks. I've been talking about how Chase Brown's going to have a running mate. They got him in Taj Brooks. I love Taj Brooks. I think he's got the chance to step into a role. He's great out of the backfield. He's big enough to run between the tackles. This team needs help running the ball. James. I'm losing my train of thought. We've been going way too long. Chase Brown, I think is serviceable, great on third down. He's great in situational ball, but between the tackles is just not his game. He's too small. He got ate up in a lot of times by D tackles when they get penetration. Taj Brooks, to me, is a guy that can win those. Fantastic runner at Texas Tech. One of 2 players last year to have over 100 yards in every single game. The other one's name was Ashton Genty. One of 2 players to have over 90 rushing yards for the last 22 collegiate games. Guess the other one, Ashton Genty. He is a great player. I think he's going to be really good as a serviceable back. I don't think he's going to step in and break fantasy or be the starter or anything like that, but I think he's going to have a role.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you here. Like, I agree on the Taj Brooks pick. I would not fault you for going Jordan James, though. The reason I say that is because he did go to the 49ers, and we've seen it time and time again. You've got Jordan Mason, you've got Garendo, you've got all these guys who Kyle Shanahan just figures out a way for it to work.
We're not leaving. We're not leaving.
No, you're not getting rid of me that easy, Hoff. But no, I mean, all jokes aside, Jordan James is an okay pick. I just personally believe in Taj Brooks a little bit more. I do think he has a good receiving profile as well. And guess what the Bengals love to do? Throw the ball. And guess who they paid? All of their receivers. So they're going to be throwing the ball. Taj Brooks could get check downs from Joe Burrow all day long. So at that point, just do Taj Brooks. And if at some point Jordan James, turns into the next Christian McCaffrey, you can blame me later. That's fine. But I would take Taj Brooks for now.
Last question here. Pete says he has the 512. Who should he take? Here's how I know this question's fake. Pete didn't win a league. He doesn't have the 512. That's going to do it for us. Catch you tomorrow. We are live at 8:30. So tune in next time. We'll see you then. Be sure to like the stream, subscribe to the Faceoff Sports Network, comment below.